All right, welcome everyone. I already see people joining, so we'll just give it another second. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little bit of echo. All right. Great. 1 minute past the hour, so I'll just kick it off. So first of all, thank you so much for joining today. My name is Catherine Fulkent, and I'm the founder of a publication called FemTech Insider. And as the name says, we cover the business of FemTech and also talk about women's health innovation. And today I have the great pleasure to guide you through this session where we will be discussing the future of FemTech with an esteemed panel of panelists that's joining me today. So just before we kick off, a little bit of housekeeping. Do feel free to use the chat throughout the session, and please also do feel free to ask questions using the chat box. We will try to get to as many questions as possible at the end of the session, and I will also have my eye on it to make sure nothing gets, no question remains unanswered. And also for your information, this event is actually in collaboration with Reuters Events Pharma 2024 in Barcelona, which is happening on April 16th and 18th. As attendees of this event, we're also super excited to offer you a discount code, which is FemTech350, and you can use it when booking your ticket for the event. So before we jump right in, I'm gonna just leave you with a few stats to kind of set the scene. So as mentioned, I run a publication called FemTech Insider, and I'll be very honest, 2024 has been a pretty exciting year for me so far, because I really feel that women's health and the women's health innovation space is finally getting the attention it needs and also deserves. We have seen a couple of reports come out, Silicon Valley Bank, Deloitte, McKinsey, and they all speak to the same thing. While the market overall is down, we've seen a dip in the overall health tech investment space by 27%. This has not affected FemTech in this way, so we've seen 5% growth in the same time frame. This sounds promising. What I will also say, and this is maybe a little bit the bad news, is despite this growth, all of the investments made in the healthcare space, FemTech or like women's health, is still only 2% of that entire number. And this is very unfortunate, especially given the big potential that the women's health innovation space has. Investments addressing the women's health gap, and I'm quoting McKinsey here, could add years to life and life to years and potentially boost the global economy by $1 trillion by 2040. So very, very big numbers and exciting space to be in. And I'm thrilled to be here with my panelists today talking about the future of FemTech. And without further ado, what I will ask of my panelists right now is to briefly introduce themselves and also talk a little bit about their touch points with the FemTech or women's health innovation space and sort of what lens they're bringing to the conversation today. So Lisa, maybe I'll kick it off with you because I see you first on the screen. May I ask you to briefly introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your experience in the women's health space?
Of course. Thank you, Catherine. So my name is Lisa Falco. I work as a lead consultant for data and AI at Zulke. We're an engineering and service company. I have a quite long history in FemTech. I was working in FemTech even before actually the term was coined. So I was the first employee of a Swiss startup called Ava Women, where I was leading the algorithm developments and as head of data science. We developed a bracelet to help women get pregnant faster by finding where in the menstrual cycle they were the most likely to get pregnant. And we also were looking into things linked to menopause and pregnancy and see what opportunities we had there. And that was already in 2015. Even before that, I was in women's health working with bone research, which is really a big topic in women's health as well. We suffer much more from osteoporosis, for instance. And after my 5 years at Ava Women, I decided actually to write a book about women's health and the physiology, like really trying to explain what's happening inside of our bodies that is leading to all those aspects that we see in terms of our health, of our mental health, just simply trying to give an explanation of all that. And since then, I'm helping femtech companies in the very, very beginning, trying to give them some guidance on where to get started. Yes, I think I will leave the space too early. So it's really something very close to my heart.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Lisa. And talking about helping early stage startups succeed, Katja, maybe I can hand over to you because I think that's also what you're about at Digital Health London.
Fantastic, thanks. Hi all, my name is Katja Masconi-Yule. I'm a senior program manager at an organization called Digital Health.London. We are an NHS organization and we work pan-London to improve the use of digital technology across the health and social care sector. We've been around for many, many years and through that time have supported the digital health industry in a number of ways. We run a number of accelerators supporting early stage and later stage startups all across the digital health space. We also support NHS staff who are delivering some form of digital transformation project or piece of work across their organization or across their department. And we also work really closely with academia to ensure that all of those pieces are being matched together and to ensure that that evidence generation is happening and is showing what is working and what isn't working. But really specific to the topic today, we have supported a number of FemTech programs over the last few years in our much more broad digital health accelerators. But specifically last year, we worked with an organization called Innovate UK, which is a funding organization here in the UK, to deliver a FemTech specific accelerator. We supported 12 companies over the course of 10 weeks to understand their product and how that might fit best into the NHS pathway that they would fit into, but really supporting them to be prepared to apply for feasibility funding that was attached at the end of the accelerator. So really gave us fantastic insight into what that looks like, both from an innovator and a founder perspective of delivering and designing this FemTech technology, but also really importantly, seeing what that would look like from an on the ground within the NHS perspective.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Katja. I heard you talk a little bit about regulatory, so I'll just hand over to Paula on that and let you introduce yourselves.
Yeah. Thank you, Catherine. So I'm Paula Antunes, and it's a pleasure to be here and share my perspective on how we can improve women's healthcare outcomes. So professionally, I'm a regulatory affairs expert in medical device and digital health with a passion for innovation. And what I've been doing through the past 8 years is proving safety and performance of these products which have a medical purpose through approval with the health authorities around the globe, like EU, US, China, and Japan, to ensure compliance with established requirements. And in regards to the specific topic of FemTech, there are specific requirements for diversity from the authorities. So throughout my career, I've been involved in development of devices that need to consider specific women characteristics to create design that is usable for all individuals. And that's a perspective that today I'd like to bring, is why and how to consider sex differences in product development to ensure that the devices are effective and accessible to all the individuals, being targeting a specific subset or even when it's just a global group.
Amazing. So obviously, very important work also in terms of, when looking to commercialization and, talking about commercialization, I'll let Elsie introduce herself.
Thanks, Catherine. And yes, definitely on the other side, perhaps of the spectrum, from regulatory to commercial. That's really where my focus is, looking at digital health products and how to commercialize them, particularly in Europe. So I work for Otsuka Europe, which is the headquarters group within the European area. And then my specific focus is not on FemTech specifically, it's digital health products more broadly. But as part of my role, I've definitely evaluated a couple of products in the FemTech space, and that's been very interesting. Additionally, way back in my past research life, I actually did some research in the obstetrics and gynecology research center. So FemTech products certainly, an area that I'm very interested in. And I think the space is definitely evolving a lot. So very exciting to be talking about it today.
Amazing. And we have someone else today on our panel who has the innovation focus in the pharma world. So Fatima, I'll just ask you for a quick introduction and to share what your touch points with FemTech have been so far.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for having me here. And I love that we are touching the different roles to make FemTech a reality for women. Well, I'm a biomedical engineer by training, and I've been in different areas. I've been in the clinical research area where we try to figure out how to implement digital health on R&D before coming into the commercial space. I've been also on digital health startups and in a female femtech startup, specifically like trying to bring menstrual blood as a biomarker. So that was when I started in the femtech area, and I become an advocate since then. And now in the innovation department here in Spain, I'm running the digital health solutions department with a specific focus on breast cancer. So I'm still in touch in with the femtech startups, and really excited of what they have to bring. Like actually, I've been in the Mobile World Congress this week, and I was happy to see that the femtech startups are still there. They're still going through the clinical trials, and they're bringing a lot of breakthroughs to the femtech space with clinical evidence for the women to adopt. So happy to continue the panel on this topic.
Exciting, wonderful. So as you can all see, we have a panel with a very vast experience in this space. Also, I know it's a very diverse experiences, which I think will make for a very, very interesting discussion. So thanks everyone for joining today. So my first question that I'd like to ask to the panel is, I've talked a little bit about kind of a few numbers in the beginning and the big opportunities, but I'm specifically sitting where you sit in this ecosystem. From your perspective, what are actually the biggest opportunities that come with that we're currently seeing in the women's health space? But where there's opportunities, there's obviously also always a few challenges. So my question to you, what do you see as the biggest opportunities, but also the biggest challenges at the moment in women's health overall, for your role specifically, but also for the ecosystem? And maybe let's kick it off with Katja from Digital Health London, because you work pretty across the ecosystem with a lot of different stakeholders.
Yeah, and I suppose listening to everybody's intro, we have all met before, but kind of occurred to me now as everybody was talking about their roles again, is I think probably also key to highlight that we probably work with companies or have access to companies at quite different stages. So, I'm probably less on the companies who are still deep in their clinical trials and more ones that are kind of closer to being adopted on the ground. So we probably all will have slightly different insight into what the challenges and opportunities might look like. But from a UK healthcare perspective, I think a really big challenge for us has been, and to be fair, this is probably a worldwide issue, is that shift in mindset and healthcare delivery. So there's obviously, we all know that kind of take on research, clinical trials, etc., that kind of favors the male data, the male anatomy, etc., which has for many decades followed through in terms of what that then gets delivered on the ground. That's slowly being auto-corrected. It will take time for us to see that on the ground, but I think really key is also that mindset and actually the delivery on the ground. So from a clinical viewpoint, challenging clinicians to think what that might look like in two different anatomies, but also really importantly what the pathway looks like, the pathway in terms of what the patient would follow depending on their symptoms and the way they describe what it is that they're feeling and what they might need support with, is quite a big challenge for us, just kind of on a delivery perspective. From a founder perspective, investment, it's always been an issue. I think it's particularly difficult for female founders who generally are the more likely to found femtech companies. That's always harder for them in a room full of male investors. Raising investment is tough, and without that, particularly in a national health service like this, without that runway, it's very hard for them to kind of keep themselves going to eventually kind of get those contracts and get the data going. But opportunities are there. The government released a women's health strategy in 2022, which has really kind of put a core priority on what we need to focus on for the next 10 years. And that's slowly seeping through the system, which I think will hopefully translate into a lot more adoption of this femtech and improve the experience for women across the system. So yeah, first initial thoughts, but happy to be challenged and happy to hear it from different aspects.
So one thing I heard you mention was actually around data. And I mean, we talk a lot about, the lack of data specifically around women's health that we have at the moment. And I think, Paula, you mentioned earlier that you're looking quite closely at, having all the gender aspects also represented in product design. So maybe I'll let you jump in here and, talk a little bit about how you're seeing the challenges around data in the women's health space. And then also talk a little bit about the opportunities that we have at the moment.
Yeah. So I think in terms of data, so when you think about FemTech, if you think about the companies that develop products, drugs, or technology developed specifically for women conditions, I think in terms of development, the product is developed like targeting them, right? But as you said before, and the reports that came out this year, a lot of the technologies and drugs, they are for a broad population, right? And as Katja just mentioned, for historical reasons, they were developed in a biased way and with a lack of testing on women, which has impact on the effect of treatment in women specifically, also side effects and all that. So I think that's the primary challenge and opportunity in terms of development is to consider the sex differences in the medical devices and digital health development when looking at how can different people react differently to your product and include them. Of course, then comes how to include how to have equality, right, in sex representation in trials or clinical studies when you need them, and you need them for both drugs and devices, and that there's a lot of barriers to have women representation, but there's also a lot of opportunities and support from many different groups, also inside the health authorities and in the different regions. So I think that would be a huge shift in the healthcare provided to women if we could improve that.
So I guess you could say it's like one of the biggest challenges that could be one of our biggest opportunities.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So let me maybe ask the same question about around challenges and opportunities to Lisa and Fatima next, because you've obviously, both of you have experience with femtech startups. Lisa, you talked about your experience with Ava in the past, and Fatima, you talked about your work with QWin on the menstrual health diagnostic side, or menstrual blood diagnostic side, sorry. Sort of having spent so much time in this space, how have you seen it evolve? And sort of, with that view of really having been among the pioneers in this space, how are you kind of looking at femtech now compared to maybe when you first got into the space, and how have the challenges and opportunities changed?
I mean, we see there's a huge, there's so much happening in the space and so many enthusiasts, and we've seen also women are very, very open to share their data. So whenever someone is trying to launch a new product and they're asking for beta testers and need data from women, then they show a huge, an amazingly positive attitude towards sharing their data and helping to bring this research forward. So wherever there is an initiative, there seem to be people willing to bite on it. And I think data comes together a lot together with digital health, and digital health is pretty much about bringing the healthcare to the people themselves and it gives a great opportunity for women to take their own health into their own hands. I think traditionally women were pretty much of the mercy of the doctor, and having a doctor that is open-minded and actually listening to the women and taking their problem seriously. In some countries, some regions, we're very fortunate. I mean, in Switzerland, we have an amazing healthcare system where women are mainly being taken seriously, whereas that is not the case in other regions. But thanks to data and AI and digital health solution, you can really bring this to the women themselves, empower them by knowledge about their own bodies, and give them health advice. I think this is really exciting development. Also in prevention, there is so much happening, but one of the big problems or challenges in prevention is finding the right business case. Who is actually willing to pay for you not getting sick? I mean, often not women themselves. You don't want to you don't put a lot of money into solution that may or may not prevent you getting sick 10 or 20 years from now, right? So prevention is always a super challenging business case. So I think that's one of the difficult parts. Yeah, Fatima, I leave too.
I was on mute. I think you touch a key point on talking about prevention, because from the commercial side, what we have seen is that we launch digital health solutions for women, but there is no adoption or there is no demand. If we are talking on the prevention side, maybe we are not doing a good job on communicating the benefits of it, but we have not seen that women are demanding these kind of products. So it's kind of difficult for making them adopt them if they are going to work on prevention. But what I have seen throughout these years is that now we are getting clinical evidence on the benefits of these solutions. And this is helping us to convince them to adopt the solutions and integrate them in their daily lives. Like when Qbean was a really hard topic to bring out, because we were talking about menstrual blood, and imagine all the male investors when you talk about menstrual blood, they didn't want it to hear, but then you talk about the market and how huge it is and the impact that can have. And we were launching in the US, which is really difficult to access like the care. And we were doing different interviews to diabetic women, and we were asking them if we launch a menstrual pad where you can do a blood test every month and avoid the pathology that you have developed because you were not treated right, then they say yes, that they will buy it. But if you ask healthy people if they will buy this pad and have a blood test analysis every month, they didn't understand it. But because I think we have been educated to go to the healthcare practitioner when you have a problem and not before. So what I have seen, I think the market is evolving and we start having the clinical evidence, but also women and women as the market demanding the product, we should do a better job on supporting these kind of products, being a consumer. I think like B2C, it's what's gonna change the market if we start adopting these kind of products.
And maybe just to build on that, Catherine, if I can.
Expert right here, Elsie.
Not at all, but I totally resonate with what Fatima was saying about that the kind of recognition of value, right, from a more traditional payer healthcare system standpoint versus from the actual user, and who may or may not be used to having to pay or think about out of pocket for some of these products. And I think that's one of the challenges for this space in particular is, if you're looking at a low cost, a wellness type approach, then you are basically competing against a gazillion products that are out there, right? And it's very challenging to have significant uptake and recognition. But on the other side, if you're looking for a more traditional sort of what a lot of us in Europe are used to, right, a national public payer paid for health system, and therefore these products to be reimbursed as part of our general healthcare products, that is very hard to get then the recognition from the payer side of the value and willing to pay a decent price point for these products. And so one of the first things you really have to work out from the beginning is, where does your product really sit, right? Where is the best place in terms of the value? Is it better placed as a little bit more direct consumer, or is it better placed as via a health professional? And there's actually in between as well. You can actually do both in many markets. So that aspect is one of the first challenges often when certainly when I look at the opportunity for a new digital health product, be it FemTech or otherwise, is to understand where does it really fit in that space.
Elsie, let me actually continue with you, because you mentioned you've looked at a lot of, new projects, companies, solutions in the FemTech space. What are some of the big challenges that you see with them? Is it around commercialization, or are there kind of other aspects that are challenging in terms of, bringing these solutions to market, or, what's keeping you from getting more involved sort of in this opportunity?
Yeah, and I would say actually that the biggest challenges are probably not unique to FemTech per se. I think that the biggest challenges are really the lack of differentiation and the unique selling points of some of these products compared to what you could potentially be competing against out there. And, I think this is one of the probably consequences of, the uptake of digital post-COVID, is that there's this huge mass spectrum of, companies, products, flooding, wanting to make something available and see an opportunity, but consequently, it hasn't been as much what I would consider true innovation in the sense of products that actually deliver a unique mechanism of action or a unique approach to the therapy area that is not otherwise being thought of. And I think digital products have that potential. And we have seen some examples, which genuinely do have what, is considered a very novel mechanism of action. But we've also seen a flood of products that are effectively seeking to digitize existing approaches. And, I'll give an example. So mental health is the space that I work a lot in. And so, there's a huge wealth of products that effectively offer various forms of digitized, psychotherapy and behavioral therapy. And that is very valuable, of course, for the obvious reasons of convenience, access. But it's not a new, treatment modality, right? It's not a new, mechanism of action there. You're repurposing it in a digitized format. It's a new delivery mechanism, and there's tailoring, but there isn't genuine innovation in the MOA, and that's the piece that I certainly would love to see more. And I think there's opportunity to do that more in the future.
Maybe let me also bring Katja into the discussion at this point. Is this like similar to what you obviously, you look at like a little bit later stage kind of companies, and how they can support the healthcare system. But would you agree with that? Like the things that you see, do they have this unique sort of path to market or unique aspects to them? And I'm assuming you're also watching kind of a little bit the early stage activity, specifically in the UK market. What do you see in terms of the solutions that start out and those that actually make it, sort of further along to implementation potentially in the healthcare system?
I would say probably not for most of them, in that not having unique, purely because I think that what they're solving is such an important issue, but often, at least from a National Health Service perspective, it's largely focused on pathway redesign, access to services, waiting list reduction. So the product that they're developing might be very specific for a women's health pathway, but the actual technology isn't exactly anything new, and it's being used elsewhere in the world, or it's being used elsewhere in the system to just do something else. So I'd say probably not for most of it. It's not this wild revolutionary piece of tech. That being said, there are always some fantastic examples. One of the companies we supported last year, a company called Bloom 43, was founded by a plastic surgeon who focuses on post-mastectomy breast reconstruction, and really noticed as a plastic surgeon the issues and the complications women would have with their skin post-op. So whether that be infection, whether that needing loads of skin graft, loads of hospital time. And something really simple was just wearing a hot water bottle on their skin the night before the operation. And that heat on the skin was something that was having a fantastic impact on the outcomes post-op. Now, again, that's not revolutionary in the science behind it. And it's probably being used in many aspects of pre-surgery support in other areas, but hadn't been I've ever incorporated in this particular area for women's health. So he's now developed what almost looks like a remote or hands-free breast pump that women will wear the night before the op for a certain amount of time. And because it's electronic, it'll automatically get to the right temperature and hold it for the right amount of time, reducing the risk of having a hot water bottle on your breast, which obviously can have a number of risks associated with that. And that's something that's quite revolutionary kind of in our area of really making a huge impact on women's health. But again, I suppose the technology and the science behind it isn't groundbreaking, but it is that unique twist and kind of bringing that to life into the system.
So all of these things are quite specific, and we've actually had a couple of audience questions around prevention. So is that also from a healthcare system perspective? And I'm not letting you off the hook yet. Is that something that you see? Is it more difficult to sort of make a case for prevention in that sense, just because it's not as direct in terms of the RI or the outcomes that can be shown in a treatment pathway?
Exactly that. I think the hardest part is the commissioning aspect of it. I can't remember who mentioned it earlier, but it's that who's paying for the prevention. Who's taking out of pocket this year in an already stretched system to save money, potentially for a hospital or a GP practice that isn't in their patch in 5 years' time. And that's a really tough area, at least from a National Health Service perspective, as opposed to a private healthcare perspective. So yeah, I think prevention we feel very passionate about it, and there's a lot of talk on the importance of it. Everybody acknowledges that, but it is from a commissioning perspective particularly challenging.
Great. So maybe I'll also, hand that question over to you, Lisa, because obviously, you've written a lot about, kind of, what happens in a woman's body. You've written a book on this, and also, worked with Ava on the fertility side, which again, is also sort of women like to take into their own hands. And we've also had a few questions sort of around the commercialization aspects of it. And I'm just wondering, have you seen these challenges around commercialization in any of the work that you've done in the past?
Yes, that's the short answer. I mean, it is very challenging to find the right payer, especially for prevention. When it comes to, for example, to fertility, it's a bit more straightforward because women really have an incentive. The women that were buying Ava, for instance, they had already started their fertility journey trying to get pregnant, and then they experience a pain. They don't get pregnant as fast as they were hoping to do, and compared to very expensive fertility treatments, buying a bracelet that helps you track your menstrual cycle, it's such a small investment in comparison. It's also a very small investment in comparison to having a baby. So in that sense, it is quite grateful, a full market, because you give it directly, you sell B2C directly to the people that need it. So that one, that will quite straightforward. But of course, I've seen many startups struggling with prevention. For example, some women are much more likely to they're much higher mortality in cardiac arrests, for instance, because they're not being recognized as actually having a heart attack, because we experience very different symptoms compared to men, and they have 30% higher risk of dying than men, unless they actually come to a female doctor that recognizes symptoms. And I've seen companies trying to really push this prevention, this information forward, but there is no business case behind that, which makes it difficult. Something we've seen in the US otherwise is that employers have a lot of incentive in having healthy employees. And that could be a potential buyer if you more focus on the employer side or directly to health insurers. That's of course not the case in UK, I guess, but in Switzerland we have specific health insurers, and they have an interest of having the people they insure staying healthy longer, then they actually make more money. So these are some solutions.
Fatima, let me ask you, you talked a little bit about the challenges, and we've had a few questions from the audience coming around sort of commercialization and, is it an issue of maybe marketing, sort of the challenges that you've seen with QWIN in the beginning? How does that translate into the work that you do now? How are you thinking about innovation and specifically women's health innovation?
Yeah, well, I have to announce that QWIN, they just got the FDA clearance, so they reached the market, and I'm really curious about how it's gonna work, if the market's gonna buy it. So maybe it's changing. I think in the new generations, the Gen Z and the millennials, they do want this kind of products because they see it like renting a car or having these finance apps. So they don't see why health space should be different, and they should be able to control it through their phone. So I see a trend there in terms of commercializing, but I'm curious to see it because it's the first FDA clearance menstrual pad. So let's see how it goes in terms of prevention and detecting different diseases. But what I have seen now and on trying to launch the different digital products into the breast cancer space and in the oncology space, it's women, they at least in Spain, they're really attached to their healthcare practitioner, so they're going to do what their healthcare practitioner does. So that's why I was like asking for this clinical evidence, because if I have to convince the healthcare practitioner to prescribe any app or any program or any solution that they want their patient to adopt, it has to come from them. One example that we do have evidence right now is that women, if with breast cancer, if they do exercise, they're going to improve their survival rates. And we have been trying to launch different apps or different programs for them to do this exercise and have better outcomes. And we do have like some oncologists convinced with the clinical evidence, but we are struggling having the women committed to do this exercise. So maybe I think maybe the technologies we are using are not the right ones, and we are not understanding our consumer. So maybe that's the gap. We are still figuring out how we should go with them, and we try to develop these apps with the patient, but we have early adopters. So it's kind of difficult because what's the percentage of early adopters, and how big we want to, like how many patients we want to reach.
Awesome. Paula, maybe I'll let you chime in on this as well. How do these challenges show up in the work that you do? I think we may have just lost Paula. Yes, no, maybe? No? Okay. She's frozen. I'll
Yeah.
so
So from the role I have in developing of this. Yeah, can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
yes, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was saying that from my perspective and touching into the market access and marketing and reaching and the audience, dependent on what claims you can do about your product. So from the regulatory perspective, for example, there are some of the products that my colleagues have mentioned, which are not, meaning you don't need so much evidence, so you can like launch the product faster, but then you also don't have the evidence or the claims to say, okay, this product will improve these things specifically by this amount, right? And that can also be a challenge in what's happening in this space, mainly in digital health with apps where you develop software so fast and you want to launch it like quickly. And then if you enter into medical claims, then actually it adds like some month and cost to develop the product. You need to go to FDA approval, as for example, Fatima was mentioning, and that's another area. So yeah, that could be one of the a factor to take into account.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you so much, Paula. So maybe let's shift gears a little bit. We've talked about like the challenges and the opportunities that we're currently seeing, but of course this webinar is called the Future of FemTech, so you can't let me get away without asking all of you, what are the technologies that you're most excited about at the moment, and how do you think they're going to impact the way women's healthcare is delivered in the future? And maybe Lisa, let me start with you on that one.
Yes, so for me, just as I mentioned before, the fact that you bring the healthcare home to women, to their homes, giving them the empowerment there to kind of circumvent the healthcare, not circumvent, You can never replace a good doctor, and that's also not the purpose, but still making them feel more comfortable at home. So all these digital health solutions and AI, I think, are really exciting, but also the things that Fatima mentioned, the fact of being able of analyzing biomarkers in menstrual blood. And I recently wrote about this company that found biomarkers for breast cancer in tear liquid. And all these possibilities makes it possible to do those tests at home. Maybe they're not good enough actually to make a diagnosis. They don't have that accuracy, but they function very well as screening tests and give you something on the bone saying, okay, maybe something is really not right. Often women have that feeling, but they're not being listened to. But if they can back it up with some home testing and take this to their doctor, that would actually help them get faster to the adequate care. And this is, something I'm very excited about.
Maybe I'll go to Katja, and I actually have a follow-up question on this. Do you think we're ever gonna, get to a point where there's gonna be willingness to reimburse these things from a healthcare system perspective? I mean, we're going back to the conversation around prevention, but
I'd like to hope so. I think it's a hard yes or no answer.
Yeah.
But realistically, as Lisa said, the social prescribing element of it and giving patients, from all aspects, obviously we talk about women today, but I think patients from every angle, the ability to manage what they can themselves and give them the power to do that, I think is fantastic in terms of the pressure it takes off the system, giving people who need access to the system immediately that access, and giving those that are able to and passionate about managing it themselves the power to do that. So I'd like to say yes, but I think we might be a bit far from that.
Let me move on into the actual question. What are you seeing that you're actually excited about at the moment?
Oh, it's such a tough question. I just feel like, for us, like waiting lists, I've mentioned that before. I think anything that for us ensures women are getting access to care quicker. A really big topic of conversation at the moment in the UK is endometriosis. On average, women wait about 8 years to get diagnosed, and it can be incredibly debilitating. So I think any technology for us that changes that for women, stops them from having to just live on pain relief for 8 years while things get worse, and I think is boring but practical. So maybe doesn't fit it perfectly under the exciting banner. But yeah, I think that would probably be the key focus.
I mean, there's a very interesting question that we got from the audience on specifically this point. It's is it more important to go down this path of improving access, for example, of decreasing waiting list pathways versus genuine MOA, innovation in femtech? So where do we draw the line, and where is exciting technology versus really making it down the commercialization pathway into like potentially making a difference in the healthcare system?
Yeah, and I think key to that, I think, is also finding ways to optimize pathways that already exist. If women are coming in for mammograms, what can we incorporate in those settings that allows us to reach the women who are already there? They've already done the travel, we've already got them in the building. What else can we add to that, and how are we maximizing those touch points we already have with them? I think is also really key for a patient system.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Thank you.
But Catherine, to your question actually in comments, interestingly enough, prior to this session, I was looking at what products are available that's been reimbursed in other markets, and some of you may be familiar with the German reimbursement process, DiGA, and what they've set up, which is great, right? It's effectively a national reimbursement for DTX or digital health products, and they do have a product, I think, in endometriosis that's being covered at a national level, by the German payers, as well as a couple of other femtech products. So actually, the numbers is not low. There's I think 5 women-orientated products out of, I think it was 50-something products that have gotten recommendations. So not terrible, not amazing, clearly. I can see, Lisa, you're thinking it's not a fantastic number and we can improve it for sure. But, the fact that there is some there, and actually in comparison to men-only products, there's only one male-only product there.
Actually, also let me ask you also, because you talked a little bit about kind of, the DiGA and sort of also, what gets reimbursed by DIGA. And we also had a question on this around market potential and sort of, from your commercialization perspective, how do you look at different markets, or like how do you determine when looking at a new innovation, whether you believe there's a market for this or not, and sort of how do you bridge that gap between theoretically the market is there, but are consumers actually willing to buy this, pay for this? Do we have that pathway? How do you think about kind of sort of very early innovation and its potential to make it in the end?
Yeah, so at a high level, we always look at what I consider sort of intrinsic and external kind of factors, right? So you obviously you look at the product, you look at everything to do with the product, how it was developed. It's what is the unique selling point? What's the patient population, and consequently, how does that then map to unmet need? But externally, the market landscape is very important to evaluate, and precedents, right, and examples of success stories is also really good benchmarks as to whether or not you can make it with a similar product, or how much differentiation, for example, you might need. So in the case of Germany is certainly hailed, I think, as one of the leading markets, right, for reimbursing these types of products today. But conversely, the uptake is actually, for some products that are covered under that list, the uptake is significantly lower than some of the big products that are covered in the UK. But the UK doesn't actually have a national, as it stands, really coverage. It has recommendations, but it doesn't mandate that commissioning. So you're getting challenges in different challenges in different countries that you have to address. And really, the impact that has on your product will depend a lot on what is, the intrinsic value of the product, right? And what's the focus in terms of the unmet need, and the ability for it to address that.
And maybe let me go back to or Lisa, did you want to say something?
Yes, just one small comment about the adoption of these digital health solutions and the pair. At some point, we're going to have to integrate them. We're going to have to use more AI, because the World Health Organization, they're actually predicting that by 2050, worldwide we'll be lacking 10 million healthcare workers. And what are we going to replace them with? We have to become so much more efficient generally in the healthcare system. And there are many ways, of course, of solving it, but I really think that digital health and AI will play an incredibly important role there. So eventually, and now we're still a bit in the experimentation phase, trying to look for what is it that really work. But in 10, 20 years' time, it almost has to become more accepted to use these tools to be able to solve these huge challenges that we're facing.
Maybe, Paula, I'll invite you into the conversation at this point. What are you seeing? What are you excited about in terms of the technological advancements? And what needs to be considered from a kind of gender lens perspective when building these tools?
Yeah, I think I'm very excited about the breakthrough, not in the innovations per se. I'm also, but more in the mindset from manufacturers and us as individuals, because like we see that regulators, they are putting effort in developing guidelines to tell manufacturers that develop these technologies on how to include different both female and male individuals in the clinical studies, how to generate evidence, make sure that your product, that the effect of your product in how it affects differently these two sex. And with that, I think manufacturers would also start changing the clinical study protocols, how to integrate more women. What are the barriers? I mean, women they are still in a lot of countries the main caregivers. They have a busy life, and they have a busy life between 20 and 40, right? Mainly. And that's exactly where the biggest burden on women is at the same time. But if these women don't participate in clinical trials, you will not generate data and products which can help them. So it's really about the manufacturers to, when designing these clinical studies, how to include, how to help. Also in your own organization, if people want to participate because in a clinical trial, maybe facilitate it somehow, and us like the individuals also, since now we are more interested, more aware, we also want like customized products, we want our health taken care seriously and maybe more autonomous. Maybe there will be a raise in interest in participating, so reach out to in your hospital with your doctor, ask, can I participate in any clinical trial? What's happening? Can I help? Because there's like thousands of clinical studies happening in every country, and they still struggle to recruit women. So I'm very excited about the shift in this of this mindset.
What about you, Fatima? And what are you seeing at the moment?
I agree with most of what have been said. I really like what Elisa added, like empower women for home testing, and to have at least their foot in the door and the back, and being backed with a home test to start the discussion and not being lost inside the healthcare system. And what I'm also on the clinical space, really excited with the future of FemTech is putting the patient in the center if this becomes a reality, because I think most of the times they don't find what's happening with women because it touches different disciplines inside the hospital. So sometimes they don't link. Like for example, the gynecologist is not talking with the gastrointestinal, and it's not talking with the endocrinologist or the psychologist. So I think we cannot be treated only in one specific area. There is a lot of going on inside our bodies, instead of different chemicals and different pathways. So I'm really excited. I think the future of FemTech will be through putting the patient in the center. And also precision medicine, it's starting to what actually I believe Paula mentioned with the clinical trials, like the gender, like sex is already a biological variable on this precision medicine. So it's already included on what, like not all the medicines, like one size fits all. Right now we are, from the pharma perspective, we are including women, and we are studying how the different drugs affects women or male as one of the variables to be included. So I believe the future it's promising. So let's see if these two things happen, and are the two key, for me, the key points to make women health better.
Indeed, it sounds like the future is promising, but how do we get there? I think that's the next question. I already spotted one of my favorite questions in the chat. It's how do we get femtech companies more funding? I think that's like one of the very common obstacles that's in the way of innovators. And we have a couple of minutes left, so maybe we could just do a quick sort of roundtable among our panelists before we close off around sort of, what are the obstacles, what changes do we need, and what support do we need in the ecosystem to make this future of FemTech a reality? And maybe Katja, I'll start with you.
I was just quickly reading through the questions in the Q&A box. And I think actually my point that I'd noted initially, but someone highlighted in the questions, is medical education. And I think it's highlighting that from the training of medical or any form of clinical staff, that feels far from what we're expecting on the ground right now, but I think is really an important way of fueling that woman-orientated or thinking from both sides of the coin on the ground, and when having a consultation with a woman, is seeing a woman. I think that making that will force the commissioners to have the confidence and the nudge to allocate some of their budget to women's health alone, as opposed to saying, I've got this full budget, I need to allocate all of it to kind of across sector spending. I can't, they don't necessarily have the confidence to say, I'd like to spend 70% of this budget only on women's health. And I think by working from medical education upwards, or clinical education upwards, I think that pressure will slowly move, and eventually then lead on to hopefully the kind of pressure on investors to invest in femtech, and kind of give us that long-term goal.
Lisa, maybe I'll hand it over to you next.
Yes, I think the question to us was also with regards to funding. It's always have you found the right business case that really works? And I think you have to iterate around this a lot and really find who has the biggest interest of having healthy women, like who actually makes money out of that. And that's where I think now all these new reports that keep coming out and showing what a huge impact it has on the economy overall, and how much impact it has on employers, how much money they actually lose by having unhealthy women around, or women that are not at the full potential. That has a huge cost. And once you start recognizing that, it will be easier to formulate, I think, business cases around this, and then it will be an easier sell to investors as well. Because first you need to find the payer, and I think we're in a process. We're in the beginning of trying to find our way through this landscape, but I'm sure that we will get there very soon.
Elsie, what about you? What do you think is where's support needed, where's changes needed, what are the challenges?
So I think to a large degree I agree with Katja in that, I think a lot of it is about the awareness and the recognition of value of these types of products, from, both the people who would recommend and also even the people who would use them. And I think, a lot of us, I imagine working in this space, we're exposed to it, we understand, and we, look for, these products. But most people actually, probably have no idea what a digital health product can do and how it can help them. And certainly, a lot of people may even be deliberately resistant to it because they think that's, inferior to, alternative care such as medication or such as in-person, care. So that's the kind of thing that we do have to try to overcome. I think, more awareness, more public raising of profiles of really good success stories in this space, more media coverage of, of the value of some of the products that we're seeing up to date. I think there's actually a lot of products out there that have value, but the coverage is very limited. And I think, we could raise overall, momentum. It would really help, the industry.
Amazing. Fatima, maybe I'll ask you to chime in as well. We already talked a little bit about the sort of the challenges you're seeing around adoption. What do you think could help change this, and what support is needed?
Sure, I think we fall like it's a common sentence, but most of the companies fall in love with the solution and not with the problem. I think we have mentioned in the panel during the panel that, for example, fertility, which is a true pain for women, it's something where women are they will be investing. So sometimes I see solutions out in the market that women are not asking for them. So maybe like fall in love with the problem and see if there is an interest there to be covered that unmet need. And I would say in the pharma perspective, it's bringing the evidence. So we can help them to develop the key messages and fight against adoption. But yeah, I bring it down the challenge and really understanding the challenge, and if they are demanding it, it's key for me to see if I can help any digital health solutions to get faster to the market.
And I'll ask you, Paula, to kind of close us off with your insights on that.
Yeah, sure. I think I'll just add technology that is already out there, like the drugs and medical devices, and the ones that are out there and still have biased evidence. I think they can do a lot in post-market surveillance. The products are out there, so like if manufacturers collaborate with healthcare providers, patient groups, and regulatory agencies, they can look at, okay, are women having more adverse events? Are women reacting bad to this treatment? And plan studies with real-world evidence, which is much more valuable than clinical controlled setting, and update their products, and then that would be very, very good for women in general.
Amazing. Thank you so much, everybody. We're just at the hour, so I'll be very quick in terms of closing us off. A few things to summarize our conversation, a few things I've learned is, and I think that really stuck with me, was fall in love with the with the problem and not just your solution. The future is bright, and potentially in the femtech space, our biggest challenges at the moment could also be our biggest opportunities. So in that sense, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. Thank you to the panelists for sharing their insights. I loved having this conversation. And with that being said, a little bit of housekeeping before you get up. Again, this conversation today was in partnership with Reuters Events Pharma 2024, which happens in Barcelona in April. And if you would like to attend, you can use the discount code FemTech350 to get a discount on your ticket. And for everybody that has registered, well, everybody that was here today, but everybody who signed up for this webinar will be receiving a recording as well. Again, a very, very big thank you to all our panelists. And with that being said, I'll let you go. And thank you very much for your attendance and your contribution. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.